Thank you, Edie. It is such a humbling experience to be here, and thank you for all the organizers and the support staff to pull this global event together. I'm also thankful for everybody here past 4:30 to be listening patiently to all the sessions. So I think it's only day one, and we've heard a lot about AI and the applications of AI from music to nursing, a number of things, right? What is interesting is that AI is also being used by attackers to be able to steal the passwords and be able to use sentiment analysis on how to do launch attacks. How do you look for mechanisms to launch an attack automatically, looking for vulnerabilities within software? AI is also used by attackers in a manner to, attack the AI itself by poisoning the data, by being able to corrupt the data in which the AI was trained in. For example, with one of the chatbots, it was trained on Twitter feeds, and by putting racial slurs, the response was always back with a racial slur. In the picture that you see at the bottom, there's actually a mathematics professor from Stanford. By being able to put a pair of glasses on that, the computer was fooled into thinking that it is actually an actress. This is the Evasion Attack, right? The model itself can be attacked by asking a number of questions. It's very similar to a game that we played when we were younger, right? It's called 20 Questions, where you're guessing a name of a person, an animal, a thing, and based on the questions you're answering, and the person who's playing the game is guessing. Attackers are doing exactly the same thing. They're asking a number of questions to the model with a view to get back the results. Now, this is a couple of quick examples, right? I couldn't get the video put into the presentation, but on the left-hand side, what you see is the image from a video of a autonomous car, like a self-driving car. The video that you see in the left is the human view of it. What you see on the right is a computer-generated image on how the car is navigating itself. By introducing a small distortion, which is very difficult to see for the naked eye, you can actually fool the computer into thinking something completely random. Now, this is a test. That's why you see a number, but you can easily make it into a stop sign, to a speed limit sign, or a yield sign to a stop sign. So these are some of the possible damage that one can do. Here's another example, right? This is sentiment analysis of a movie. Supposedly is extremely bad. But by changing a couple of words here and there, very specifically, without changing the meaning, you're able to change the rating from a bad to a good movie, or anything for that matter. Now, I'm a security guy, right? The examples that I'm giving is security, but in general, the focus on trust that we've been talking about is not just security focused, but bias. There's for gender, for some of the the racial stuff that I was talking about, the algorithmic work that Dr. Konstantinos was talking about. All of these can result in some level of damage to the business. Damage could happen in terms of a brand reputation, right? You can see the number of headlines that were prominent in the last 12 to 18 months. The one at the bottom is the most important for me. A couple of years ago, when my son graduated from high school, went to college, I wanted him to get a credit card. My son and my daughter, right? So they both got Apple credit card on the same day at the same time. And turns out my daughter had a higher interest than my son. Didn't pay too much of attention to that. We basically said, don't worry about it, just use it, we'll pay it off. A year later, I see the headline that the algorithm, the model, had some level of gender bias, where it was rating women with a higher risk than men, right? Now, of course, this is not because somebody is good or somebody is bad. It's because we didn't focus on being able to use data which is bias-free. Same thing with Facebook and hiring practices, right? Uber and driving practices where some of the race was considered in terms of price adjustments. Bad things can happen even though you didn't mean it. The other aspect of impact is on the regulatory requirements. Across the world, a number of different governments are putting together a level of compliance and regulatory requirements on these things. Just like having a nutritional facts on your favorite bag of snack or your drink, the idea is to have, in the future, some level of information about the model so that you can use it for the right purpose. All of this, as an example, would obviously cause a lot of financial damage as well. So how do we go about this, right? We talked about culture and policies in the previous session. I want to focus a little bit on the technology side in this session. Doing the, basically can be summarized in two ways, right? One is you want to basically do right with AI and use AI to do the right things. That can be done by making sure you trust the data, you trust the model, and you trust the process. When we talk about trusting the data, what we're talking about is making sure that the data is high quality, not an afterthought, but right from the get-go, being able to make sure that the data is governed, being able to get the unbiased data, be able to have diversity of data, accurate, timely, content, all of that are something that you need to consider. A good example to remember this is Google Images, right? A few years ago, if you just typed in grandma on Google Images, you basically saw a whole bunch of white grandmas. Part of the reason is because the model was trained on white grandmas. Part of the reason is because in other parts of the world, we don't call a grandma, right? Probably a different word. But if you type in grandmom, then you probably see a better diversification of data. So that's one way to think about how do you get quality data. The second thing is trust in the model itself, making sure the model is free from bias. Explain the model. It's okay to make a decision. How did you come to the decision? How can you change the decision? What are the parameters that one has in control to change the decision? And be able to document that. That's important. Very similar to how we talked about a bag of your favorite snack. And the last piece on that is making sure that the model is secure from what we call drift. We talked about that drift in data, right? Robustness is another word for that. It's not just a technical aspect, but also business. Things change. Things change on a daily basis, and the model has to evolve. And the last one is the process, right? We kind of talked about it in the previous session as well, and just to highlight it a little bit, it's not a one-time thing. Training is not a one-time thing. Data is not a one-time thing. Having that process of being able to train with the right data, making sure you're scanning for the right level of vulnerabilities, and making sure you're putting in the production is an important process which requires governance. When you have these things working, then good things will happen. Now, one of the things to note is that this is a very new area, emerging area, a lot of activity, right? A lot of AI models are technical. More than 70% of them don't make it into production, right? And even those that make it into production take almost a year. So it's ripe for collaboration over here, right? Talking about security, the bad guys are doing an amazingly good job of working with each other. We as defenders have to come together in an open community as well. So that's why there are a number of ways to basically address these types of trust so that you can have trust for the AI. Part of my passion is to drive trust through open source. We've released a number of tools that you see, tools to detect bias, tools to detect explainability and explain that, tools to basically go and scan your entire model against 30 different algorithms that can break it and then fix it, right? what I would encourage all of you is to go and embrace the open so that we, as defenders of security, can come together and produce trustworthy AI. Thank you very much.